you hinted on in the earlier segment when we were talking about Alabama and the SEC is about the future of the college football playoff. I saw the allegation that you woke up and chose violence as you decided to inform SEC fans that the SEC Southeastern Conference might not be the conference with the best chance of getting 2 college football playoff teams in. And so as we're sort of putting a review on last week, how much confidence or what sparked you really diving into this idea that it's not the SEC with 2 in seemingly written in stone, as so many people had in their minds anytime you tried to ask them their projected playoff prior to Saturday?
I think honestly, it didn't really jump into my head until Sunday morning. I was on desk duty for the news, just dreading Ed Orgeron being fired, which thankfully didn't happen. But the polls came out and I was on poll duty, and it's just seeing 5 Big Ten teams in the top 10 of both polls, and Alabama just coming off a loss. And as I was talking about earlier, Alabama looking kind of vulnerable now in 2 road games, more vulnerable. Like, we've seen Alabama look more vulnerable in a game outside the college football playoff more times already this season than I think we had in the last 5 during a regular season game. And I think that this is a team that I don't have a lot of faith in Alabama beating Georgia if it gets to the SEC championship game. And you notice I say if, because now I don't think it's a sure thing that Alabama does get to the SEC championship. I think it will, but it's not the slam dunk that it seemed to me just a couple of days ago. And I think that if you look at the Big Ten right now, again, I'm not predicting it's happening. I'm just saying that at this very moment, the Big Ten is more likely to get 2 teams in the playoff than the SEC is, because Iowa's schedule is pretty much done. Like, they've played the best teams that they're going to face. We talked about this on Saturday. They've got Minnesota, Purdue left. As far as records are concerned, they're the quote unquote best teams, but the 2 toughest games that they'll face are Wisconsin on the road, Nebraska on the road. Iowa has a lot of deficiencies. Iowa is not guaranteed of winning those games, but based on what we've seen so far this year, I think Iowa's going to win those games more often than not. So there's a very good chance Iowa gets to Indianapolis 12-0. When it gets there, it's going to play one of the 4 Big Ten East teams that are currently in the top 10, whether it's Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State. Both the Michigan schools are undefeated. I don't expect that to remain the case. I think they're probably the 2 least likely ones to win that division. I think they're off to great starts, but when you look at the schedules, there's still like a lot of questions to be answered. I think there's a very good chance that Ohio State or Penn State will get through the division with only 1 loss. So now we've got a scenario where we've got either a 1-loss Penn State and a 1-loss Ohio State going in Indianapolis to face a 12-0 Iowa. If Penn State gets revenge on Iowa in that scenario, is a 12-1 Iowa team getting left out of the playoff? If Ohio State beats Iowa, and is a 12-1 Iowa team being left out of the playoff for a Cincinnati? I don't think so. And if Alabama goes to Atlanta and loses to Georgia and has 2 losses, well, then the SEC has no shot in hell of getting 2 teams in the playoff. And I think that if given the choice, if the committee's looking at Georgia, Oklahoma, the Big Ten champion, and then the 4th team, and that 4th team is either a 1-loss Iowa or an undefeated Cincinnati, I think we all know what direction they're going to go.
I don't. Are you saying Iowa?
Yeah. They're not taking Cincinnati over a Big Ten team, Chip. I mean, I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but the committee's not really big on group of 5 teams.
I mean, I think it's already baked in that the selection committee can twist it any way they want. You know, they can get out there, and if the selection committee wants undefeated Cincinnati, and again, we need to get undefeated Cincinnati, then they'll be like, well, you know, Penn State did lose its quarterback in that game. You know, it's just there's so much twisting of the way that Iowa is discussed, where if they want to put Iowa in, then they're going to have all of the wins that they need to be able to make that argument. If they want to argue against it based on the decisions and the opinions of the committee members in this room, because they're the ones who vote on this and decide it, then they can find little pieces to grab hold of, I think, along the way.
I'm really not convinced that Iowa runs the table, by the way.
Neither am I.
To the Big Ten championship game. I think them finishing 11-1 is a lot more likely than them finishing 12-0. Like, their defense is incredible. Their offense is
not
improving slightly, I think, right? Like, they were a little bit better offensively against Penn State than I thought they would be, which is to say I thought they would be terrible. Instead, they were just bad. so if they keep improving, maybe they can pull it off. But I mean, they're not a lock to beat Wisconsin. They're not a lock to beat, Minnesota or at Nebraska. Tom, I think they're a lock to beat Illinois, so I'm just not really sure Illinois can score at all.
Yeah.
But I mean, like with that offense, every game against a team with a pulse is losable. Because if you just don't get the bounces on a given day, you can lose that game. But is Iowa enough of a brand name to where the committee wouldn't say, you know what, we're going to keep you guys out, we're going to put Cincinnati in to prove that, hey, like this is not an antitrust issue, and because I don't think they are. Right? They have the Big Ten stamp, but they're not a marquee program.
They're a Big Ten team. They're not an American Athletic Conference team. Cincinnati's not in the Big 12 yet.
You're saying
like it would not happen to Ohio State, but I think they might do it to Iowa.
You're saying a one-loss Iowa.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
If Iowa's 12-1 with its only loss being to either Ohio State or Penn State and Indianapolis, they're not getting left out of the playoff for Cincinnati. And this is also assuming Cincinnati's undefeated, which I'm not assuming Cincinnati's going to be undefeated either.
It's going to be ECU at the end of the season. Pirates are going to get it done. Hey, they pushed them last year. That is a game ECU can 100% play spoiler to this large college football conversation.